Hello, I'm Ron Miscavige, and this is Life After Scientology. And I have with me a very special guest, a very old friend. We go back a lot of years, decades, and her name is Amy Scobee. So, hello, Amy.
Hi, Ron.
And I'm very happy to have you on. And without further ado, instead of me going into a whole bunch of other stuff, well, I will say one thing. That cut you heard of music is from the album I did in 1974. I'm doing a little commercial now. You don't mind. And this is the album that I did. And I talk about it in my book, which is right here to my right. And it is the one that BBC heard and liked so much they wanted me to play on the air with them. And that's another story. You can read about that if you ever get my book, or if you have it, you'll know what I'm talking about. Meanwhile, it's over to you, Amy. So let's get started. And I'll tell you how I'd like to start. And I think a lot of our listeners like to hear, how did you get in Scientology? If you could go over that first, I'd appreciate it. Okay?
Sure. First of all, thank you for having me on your podcast. So in terms of when I got in Scientology and how I got in Scientology, it was when I was 14 years old. And my mom had been in Scientology already for probably a year or something like that. And I knew she was going to classes, but I didn't know anything about Scientology. One time a phone call came in and said, hi, is this Amy? And I said, yes. This is Brett from the Church of Scientology. And I said, my mom's not home. And they said, no, we're calling to talk to you. I'm like, you're calling to talk to me? I'm 14 years old. What do you want with me? I don't know you. It was really weird. It spiked my interest. Like, why are they wanting to talk to me? And he said, he wants to do an interview with me. And he heard all sorts of wonderful things about me and blah, 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 blah. So I asked my mom if I could come in and speak to him and find out. It created like a mystery for me. And I wanted to find out what this was all about and why was he interested in me. So I went down to the Scientology mission in Bellevue at the time. I'm 14 years old. My mom was with me, but she didn't come into the interview with me. She took me there, but didn't come into the interview. And basically they, convinced me to do a communications course. I did that. And then I went straight on staff. And I literally left school at 9th grade and became a full-time staff member. The first job that I did was body routing. So I'm 14 years old, out on the street in the city, asking people to come with me into the Church of Scientology. So that was quite an experience. I had a lot of people ask me, if I was a whore, or come with me. And then when they get there to a quote unquote church, this isn't what I thought it was. But anyway, it was quite an experience. So one of the first things I want to talk about is I was 14 years old. My job was a course administrator, which is the assistant to the course supervisor for the academy there. The person that was the academy supervisor, his name was Daryl. He was, I believe, 35 or something, in his 30s or something, married. And I was 14. And to put a long story short, he had me stay behind one time and had sex with me there in the academy on church premises and on the way home in his car. And that is rape. I was 14 years old. He's
terrible. It's terrible.
And, I didn't tell anybody. I was completely scared, and it finally came up, and I don't know how it did, but it finally came up. And right away, as a 14-year-old, I was put into lower conditions and made, signed treason, the condition of treason.
Amy, before you go on, let's explain what we mean by lower conditions. And okay, I'll just give it a thumbnail. It is something that a person has to do. There's a formula for these lower conditions, and it's done to somebody who has gone below the status of being a normal person, and they're considered to be a liability, or somebody who's done something bad, who has to work their way up into the group again to have a normal status. But at any rate, anybody who's put in a normal condition is the person at fault in something. If I can, am I saying that correctly in your case?
I think that's correct. Yes, absolutely. I mean, I was made to do the lower conditions. That person was put into lower conditions as well. And I was made to, get everyone's signature that I'm accepted back in the group for my crime.
Because he raped you, right?
That's right. I mean, obviously, like I'm 14, even though, people can say this was so many years ago, get over it. The reason why I'm bringing it up right now is because it was covered up. My parents were never told. My father was never told. That man would have been in jail. And as I understand it, that person went on to continue to commit child molestation with other minors and did go to jail for it. But Scientology had covered it up. And one of the things that I learned was that Scientology handles its own. You don't tell the police, you don't go outside. It was one of the first lessons that I learned, is that anything that happens bad in Scientology is contained within Scientology, is not, your dirty laundry doesn't get aired, quote unquote. And it's dangerous because you can have serious crimes going on and then they're covered up and kept within. And so justice never takes place, or, criminals don't get put away and things like that. And it's very dangerous.
Yeah, I can see that. In other words, it's done for the greater good, as they say. In other words, don't bring any shame on Scientology. You want to come off as this pristine, pure religion where nobody does anything bad and everybody is the highest ethical standard on this planet. It's horrible, but here's a firsthand experience with you, Amy. Sorry to interrupt you there, but I just had to say that, okay?
Right. And it is, a long time ago, but I bring it up because that is the way Scientology operates. And it's always going to be the way that Scientology operates because it's in their policy. So if you have family members in Scientology, I recommend you get them out. But that's just the first thing that I wanted to cover. Then at 16, I joined the Sea Org. My mom signed away, parental consent for me to go into the Sea Org. She was pressured into that. She was told that I would continue schooling, which I did not see another day of schools after I left, and that I would come home and visit, which, I think in like a 17-year period, I had 1 3-day vacation, and it was tied in with business at the same time where I came to Seattle. And, it was just really not something that you did. You did not come home and visit family or anything like that. So I went to the Sea Organization. I went to Los Angeles. It was the first time I was ever on an airplane, flying into LA on Halloween. That's when I arrived. I'm 16. I arrive in LAX on Halloween. It was a funny farm, but no one was there to pick me up. So I'm stranded. I don't even know who to call. So I get a phone book and I'm looking for, anything Scientology. I'm just calling all these reception places, Right. And nobody was really there. Finally, I got somebody to come and get me, but that was my first experience. I've got a million experiences, obviously, with 30 years of this stuff. But I went to, the first thing I did was training to be part of the flag network of procurement officers to get people to flag. So I went to Copenhagen, and I was stationed there for a couple months. And that at 16 years old, being in Copenhagen, I didn't know the currency. I didn't know any languages. I didn't know anything. And I was traveling to different places and within the Europe, like to Paris and different things like that by myself at 16.
Okay. Were you there to recruit people? Is that what your job was?
Yes.
Okay.
That's right. Yeah. Then I ended up going to Flag in Florida. So, and I was there for a couple of years. One of the first things that happened was my first husband, David Paul, and I had sex before we got married. And so we were both sent to the Rehabilitation Project Force. Again, I'm 16 years old in the Rehabilitation Project Force, where you have to wear a black jumpsuit, run everywhere you go, call everybody sir, and you're segregated from the rest of the crew. and you're doing, running laps around up and down to the 10th floor and back, for penalties for not making time targets and all sorts of stuff. So this was my introduction to flag, really. We got married on my 17th birthday because my parents said I couldn't get married till I was 17. So I got married on my 17th birthday. And then after that, I went into the Commodore's Messenger org after I got off the RPF, shortly after I got off the RPF.
Like what year, Amy, what year was that? I'm just curious.
1980.
Okay.
1980. I was in Florida. I got married in 1980. I stayed on the RPF and he got off. He was 26 years old. I was 16. He got off the RPF, because he knew so many different languages and they needed him for a language project or something. And meantime, I stay on the RPF as a 16-year-old. But anyway, so finally I got off the RPF and then I went to into the CMO. And from there, I went to Los Angeles more on recruitment. And then I ended up going back to the RPF. And from there, from the whole RPF was taken up to the INT base in 1983, I think it was.
And just for our listeners, we're talking about the INT base in Hemet, California.
Which is Hemet, yeah, International Headquarters for Scientology Management.
Right.
Golden Era Productions is located there. And so I went up there in 1983 and was part of the construction team. So this is where
Amy, were you on the construction team that built the music studio?
Yes.
Wow.
I did all the electrical and electronics logistics for that.
Wow.
Yeah.
That was a hell of a job, I'll tell you, man.
It was extensive, but this is where I learned to not sleep. I mean, we literally would work around the clock for days and days and days and days and weeks and months on end. I went for 2 years, I averaged 4 hours sleep a night. And that's where you go, maybe I'll get 6, but then I'll go 2 days with 0, like really just frying my brain, really. I mean, and it's all this emergency footing of everything's got to be done now. It's all an emergency because the planet is depending on us to get this building done or to get this, whatever we're doing.
Yeah.
Were you going to say something?
A what?
Were you about to say something? I'm sorry.
No, I mean, that's the modus operandi. It has to be done right now because every man, woman, and child on this planet depends on us getting this done. I know exactly what you're talking about. And when you're talking about sleep deprivation, when I got there in 85, I had the same thing doing music. I remember we would be up in the studio that was up on the hill. It was called the Mid-Res, which is short for Middle Reservoir. And they put there was a studio up there. And I can remember working up there and trying to get some sleep. We would lay down on the carpeted floor and cover ourselves up with sheets of styrofoam insulation for blanket. I mean, just to get any sleep. Listen, sleep deprivation is a punishment. You know that.
Yeah.
But
yeah, it's actual torture. It's actual torture.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay, go on. Continue.
Okay, so after I got off the rehabilitation project force, which they did a review and found that my assignment was incorrect, so I was reprieved after 2 years of full-time DEX. So I was taken out of there, and then I went into Commodore's Messenger Org International, which is where I worked. I was basically there for almost 20 years. And I did a lot of positions there, and I'm not going to bore anybody with that. But one of the things with the being at the INT base is you're secluded. You've got tight security. You can't leave the property without going through security or showing an approval from your superior of why your purpose for going off the property. You have to be escorted. You can't make a phone call without security or another person from the internal personnel listening in on the phone so that they can kind of guide you not to say anything you're not supposed to say, or make sure that the people who are talking to you don't say something you shouldn't hear. If they're antagonistic, they can find out if there's a situation. There's always somebody listening. I remember when my uncle was the commander of the shuttlecraft Challenger that exploded in 1986. And I was invited to go to that takeoff. Of course, I didn't go because you're not encouraged to do such things. Never having enough time for family.
Right.
And when I found out about it, it was because that's right when L. Ron Hubbard had passed. And we were listening on the radio to see what the news was going to be about L. Ron Hubbard passing. And instead, it was overshadowed by the fact of the Challenger disaster. And people were actually cheering and happy that that had occurred because it pushed under the carpet any highlights on L. Ron Hubbard's death.
Wow.
So for me, I had to write a petition to be able to go and call my family. And when I did, there had to be people listening. And, you know, I mean, it's a traumatic thing. And and you're not allowed to grieve with your family. In fact, you don't even grieve in Scientology. If you do, it's considered human emotion and reaction, and it's penalized, like case on post. And in fact, it's an offense that you can be sent to the Rehabilitation Project Force for if you dramatize or display case on post. It's an RPF-able offense.
Let's get into that a little bit, because I think this is the first time anybody's ever talked about case on post.
Mm-hmm.
What we're talking about here is, let's say somebody were to give you an order that was undoable and you knew it. If you were to shout back at them, "What the hell are you talking about? Are you nuts?" That normal response, what you would give if somebody said, "Look, I want you to knit 5 wool sweaters in the next 30 seconds. You might say, "What are you, nuts?" But that response would be considered case on post.
That's right.
You'd be dramatizing those things that are not part of you, the actual spiritual being, but they would be considered additives that you've picked up over the millennia. And these are the things that you're supposed to get rid of by receiving auditing. So anything other than yes, sir, or no, sir, or sorry, sir, I can't do anything but a polite response would be considered case on post. So in other words, you can't act rationally. You follow me? You have to act like a robot. Am I describing that pretty accurate?
I think that's perfect. And robot is right. Like, here's another, I was going to talk about this a little bit later, but since you bring that up right now, one of the main things about Scientology is, and I studied when I left, all about cults and mind control, because I was trying to figure out, what was I in? What was this thing that had such a grip on me? And how did it have such a grip on me that I couldn't think for myself? And I became like a robot with stimulus response, where you're supposed to stand up and clap at this time. You're supposed to say yes, sir, at this time. You're supposed to just lay down your life. And what I discovered, one of the books, which was great, was Releasing the Bonds and Combating Cult Mind Control, both by Stephen Hassan. Those books are fantastic, and I recommend them to anyone.
Hang on, say that again, but say the author's name slower, because I missed that.
Stephen Hassan has written a few books. One is called Releasing the Bonds, and one is Combating Cult Mind Control.
Okay.
Those are two of the books that I read when I was trying to kind of figure out what I had gone through. But what I found was so fascinating, and is one of the things that helped me kind of release out of it, is the components of mind control, which is behavior control, information control, control of your thoughts and emotions. And these things are so true in Scientology. I mean, behavior control, that's all they do. I mean, That's all they do. I can give 8,000 examples in 2 seconds. But information control is fascinating, because when I was at the INT base for 20 years, I didn't know what was going on in the world. We were kept, number one, none of us had televisions. We didn't watch TV. We didn't know anything about what was going on in the world besides the sheets that they would give us, that was just the information about what was going on in the Scientology world. And then we had the Scientology events, which was a bunch of propaganda saying how much we're expanding, how we're a household word, name, and how everyone is just so accepting of Scientology, which in the real world is so far from the truth, it's not even funny.
No, you're right about that. You're absolutely right. I sometimes will tell people I'm a writer and I wrote a book about Scientology, and they'll say, "Oh, really? Really? Yeah, yeah." And they're acting very cautiously, because they don't know if I wrote a puff piece about it or I told them. And once I mention that, I say, "Hey, listen, I'm telling you about the bad experiences I had, and I had to escape from it." Then they open up and that cult may use words I'm not going to use on this program.
Yeah.
Although I feel like it, and they'll say they're nothing but a god darn cult, and then they open up. I've never met anybody who had any other experience, any other reaction than that, and tell them about my book. I never met one.
And that's the same with me.
Yeah, yeah.
I've had
hang on a second. You wrote a book. Why don't you just mention it here?
Yeah. Okay. So yes, I wrote a book. It's called Scientology Abuse at the Top, and I've got a copy right here. Good. And this is my experiences up to a certain point, which I'm going to tell you. I just want to kind of go in a little bit of a sequence, because
and I'm going to get back. I know where we were,
yeah.
But look, hang on. If somebody wants to buy it, where do they get it?
They can go to Amazon. So it's on Kindle, and it's also an audiobook. And it's an audiobook recorded by somebody else. I just had somebody else do it. But it's on Kindle as a ebook.
Okay, and show us the cover again. There you go. Okay, so if you want to get back in the sequence, I'm fine on that. And you were talking about information control, about the books you read on cults. That's where we were.
Yeah, but I was going to go back to the INT base real quick. Okay. Which was the position that I held for the longest and probably enjoyed the most was for the Watchdog Committee member for Celebrity Centers. I was responsible for establishing the Celebrity Center, like in Los Angeles, and setting it up where the renovations and the staffing of it and the training of them and uniforming and all that kind of stuff. And plus I was away from the INT base while I was on project, running several other projects, getting that place built and established. So it was such a dichotomy, because I was training these people to be, to look nice, to have personal integrity, to have a service attitude towards celebrities, to always put on the best face and this kind of thing, compared to when I would go back home to the INT base, where everyone was being denigrated and pounded and thrown in lower conditions, thrown in the lake if they didn't comply with things on time. And it was just like such a dichotomy.
Yeah.
So it was a little bit of a release. But the reason why I bring it up is because even though it's beautiful and glitzy and has celebrity attached to it, don't let that deceive you, because it's like that to pull celebrities in so that they can be used. And they can be used to promote Scientology as if it's normalized because the celebrity's in there. And it is not normal. The strategy from L. Ron Hubbard was to make celebrities into walking success stories of Scientology, so that they will promote it and then get people into Scientology, just like you do with Adidas or something like that. You've got Michael Jordan holding up a tennis shoe and everybody suddenly wants the tennis shoe. So Tom Cruise is like that. People go, they associate, it must be cool because Top Gun's a Scientologist. Well, it's just a deception, and it's just a strategy to get people into Scientology. So that's one thing that I wanted to say, because I contributed to that falsehood by creating the Celebrity Center. And, you know, at the time, I'm thinking it is the right thing to do. But when you take a look at it, I probably contributed to a lot of people coming into Scientology through those actions. So that's why I want to make it known, is because there's an endorsement by a celebrity, or a celebrity is doing something that doesn't, you still have to do your research. That does not make it something that is good or okay. Do
Yeah.
your own research and think for yourself.
Okay, so Amy, do you ever feel bad about that?
I feel that I've been doing what I can to warn people for many years now. So I've
Let me
written a
say
book.
something. Let me say something, Evie.
Yeah,
Forgive yourself. We were all duped. Okay.
yeah, yeah,
We were all duped. We thought we were doing something great for everybody. And that's the biggest hook of all. You think by you promoting Scientology or getting everybody to be part of it, that you're going to help every man, woman, and child on the planet. Truth, I think it was one of the greatest scams that ever existed.
yeah. And scam is it's a false religion. It's
Yep. It's a cult.
It's a total cult. Well, I was really shocked when I watched about Jim Jones.
Yeah.
I don't know if you've seen the documentaries on it, but I was like, oh my goodness, this is so exactly what was going on in Scientology, aside from drinking the Kool-Aid. But I wouldn't doubt that they would do that too, because they're so radical.
Yeah.
But let me talk about the next thing, because this is where I started turning against the ways of Scientology, because of your son. Honestly, to be blunt, David Miscavige, he started beating people. He may have been doing it all along, I don't know, but I started witnessing him beating people and confining people and knocking them down and threatening them and, you know, making them feel degraded. And I witnessed, I mean, it's not just the physical attack that he would do on people, which I witnessed dozens of that. Strangling around. I mean, he even did that to me. One time we were at Celebrity Center, and he wasn't happy with a speech that was written. I think Ron Miscavige, your son, Ronnie, had helped me to write a speech that he was supposed to deliver, and he didn't like it. But he's there. It's right before he's supposed to go out. I guess he didn't have time to read it until then, and he didn't like it. So he came over and grabbed me around the neck and throttled me like this, saying, next time I do a speech at Celebrity Center, and this is in front of all my juniors and stuff, next time I do a speech at Celebrity Center, you're going to the RPF. You know, and so you kind of think, well, maybe he was doing that in play or whatever, but he wasn't. I know he wasn't. That was not play. And right after that, Shelley said to me, would you like to be the WDC for Scientology? Because we want all organizations to be as beautiful as Celebrity Center that I had just created, because I think it was a grand opening or something.
Wow.
But anyway, so I'm like, okay, I'm being strangled and threatened over here and asked for a promotion within 10 minutes over here. But
it's nuts.
talk about confusing. Yeah.
It's nuts. It ain't confusing. Crazy. But
so
that way, it's operated on a whim.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, you never knew. All of a sudden he would just fly off, like we're having a normal meeting, and all of a sudden he would be up on the table and lunged onto Jeff Hawkins or Wendell Reynolds or Mark Yeager or something. One time, Mark Yeager, his whole face is all scratched up, the top of his head, and because he's bald, you can see and his face is all scratched. And I asked his assistant, I said, what happened? And she said, I can't talk about it. So I asked him, I said, what happened to you? And he goes, I fell in a bush.
Oh, boy.
So I said, okay. So then I started asking his assistant, I said, you can't talk about it, but what actually happened? Miscavige basically punched him and shoved his face into a bush. And another time, Mark Yeager had a cast on his foot, walking on crutches. And I said, what happened to your leg? He goes, I fell. And I said, okay, what really happened? I fell off of the you know, at where the castle is, and there's this huge landing, and it goes down probably 14 feet or something like that. Apparently he accidentally jumped off of that. Well, what I found out was that Miscavige ordered somebody to take a car and chase after him, and they ran him off the edge of this thing, and he broke his ankle when he fell over that edge,
Right.
that concrete edge. But anyway, and then he also put Jaeger in a cage. He made him build a bamboo cage out by, it's on a certain part of the property up at the end base, and he was in this thing for a couple of years.
But
anyway,
wait. I don't mind that, but it's not that he stayed in there 24 hours a day, though. But he lived in that cage, right?
He lived in that cage. I don't know if he was there 24 hours a day. Gary Moorhead would know, because he went there all the time, and he was putting security on him and stuff. So
look, I'm not trying to mitigate that. Don't get me wrong, but I've heard that same story. But I understand he lived in the swamp in this bamboo thing that he built, and it was like a cage. And
yeah, I saw it.
Yeah, I couldn't imagine him living there 24 hours a day, though. But that's,
I don't know. I mean, maybe he was doing manual work around it or something like that. But that's where he was not allowed to go anywhere else on the property.
That's exactly what I heard. He made to do hard manual labor out there.
Yeah.
Anyway,
so this is how you treat another human being, regardless of how.
Don't get me wrong. I'm not trying to excuse it, please.
Oh, I know you're not. I know you're not. You're so far from doing that. I understand.
Yeah.
It's just, I saw it and I didn't do anything at the time, and it's, you know, somehow you kind of rationalize that well, that's the thing. How I got out is I finally started realizing I am rationalizing insanities.
Right.
My mind is making these things okay. And as soon as I realized that I was doing that, then I started seeing things for what they were. And I was saying, this is not okay. This cannot happen. This is illegal. How is this the top of Scientology, and it's the most insane place that you could ever go to?
Yeah.
I don't wish this on anyone. So if this is the best, how is that the case? You know, what am I actually doing?
Yeah.
So
no, I agree. And I mean, even the verbal beatings, I would see him dish out. In my book, they were worse than a physical beating. I saw him denigrate people, and they just were stopped in their tracks and just were made to feel like a piece of crap. You know that?
I think sometimes it's worse than the physical beatings.
Yeah.
It's evil, and you know, it's seriously evil. It's unbelievably evil. One of the things that he also had us do, there was a couple things. One was he had us running around a pole nonstop for like hours and hours and hours in our uniforms. And even one person who had diabetes was being made to run around, and she collapsed, and she was put into a wheelchair and pushed around the thing to continue to do it. Like, don't be case on post.
Wow.
I mean, she could have dropped and died, you know. I mean, it's so insane. Like, what was the purpose of that other than succumb to my wishes and you are to do blah? And he put us on the purification. I was on the purification program for 8 months straight, 5 hours a day, 5,000 niacin. It wrecked my body. And this is when I was like, you know what? No matter what I have to do to get off this property, I'm doing it. Because all I knew is when I was sitting there in this sauna burning to death, and he had us doing it because he said he realized that the reason why we're all such screw ups is because of our drug history. I mean, I have almost nothing, you know. And so it's just insane. It's a stupid, insane solution. So now it's like, okay, all of you terrible executives, you're going to go sit in the sauna for hundreds of hours, you know. Anyway,
that sauna, what is the temperature in that sauna when you're in there?
Oh, I don't know, 100 and something degrees. It's really hot.
Like 130. I know it's hotter than a normal sauna that you'd go in just to sweat. I do know that.
Yeah. So I started planning my escape. Finally, they sent me, because I was being defiant and they sent me to the Rehabilitation Project Force in Florida. So that's really far away from Hemet, California. I was happy about that, at least. I spent a couple years on the RPF there. I was thinking I could rehabilitate myself away from Scientology. I mean, away from the int base. However, I was saying some of the things that were happening at the int base, and then they came down hard on me because as a liar type of thing. And I was sent to the RPF's RPF, and I wasn't supposed to come out until approval was received by the int base, which wasn't going to happen. So anyway, it was just nuts. I made the local people get me off the RPF, and I basically then.
Wait a minute, Amy, before you go any further, why don't you just explain a little bit what you mean when you say the RPF's RPF?
Okay, so the RPF is supposed to be the lowest of the low in the Sea organization, where people who are considered in treason or need to be cast aside for rehabilitation full-time. They do full-time decks and everything like that. When you're in the RPF, if you totally mess up again inside the RPF, you're relegated to the RPF's RPF, and you have even less privileges, where you are segregated from everyone. You're isolated. You're under 24-hour security watch, and there's a minimum time that you have to be in there, and which is weeks. And you do hard manual labor and a few hours of rehabilitation where you're writing down your crimes and so forth. So I've done that several times, the RPF. I've done the RPF like 4 times, and the RPF.
That would be like if you went to prison and then they would send you to solitary confinement.
Yes. Yeah. You're segregated from everyone else and put under your own intensive handling. That was really nasty. I mean, I've done some serious. I remember when I was in the RPF at the int base one time, they had at the Happy Valley, the place that we had in Hemet, it was kind of like a little ranch or something like that. They had a big dump site, which was garbage for years from the int base, I guess. And it was a huge mountain. And I was working, and it's been there for a long time. And I was working with a couple other people who were also in the RPF to take that old garbage, put it in a dump truck, like shovel it into a dump truck, and take it to the actual dump.
Wow.
And that stuff had been there for years. It was full of maggots. It was wet. It was slimy. We're up in this mountain of garbage, slinging these old bags that are breaking open as we sling them onto this dumpster. Anyway, oh man, that was one time. Guy named Damien, who was working with me, slung his thing, and all the maggot juice just flies all over me. And I was like, what am I doing here? What did I do to deserve? I mean, I'm so innocent. I'm in my teens. What did I do to deserve this? I'm here to try to help people.
Yeah.
And am I so evil? Like, I got so introverted. One time I was sent to the Rehabilitation Project Force because of a needle reaction on the E-meter. So they said that I was thinking about L. Ron Hubbard when I had a quote unquote rock slam, which is an agitated movement of the E-meter. And so I was sent to the Rehabilitation Project Force. What does a person do about that? All you can do is try to figure out what's wrong with your mind.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just a complete, total devastation of a person. I didn't physically do anything. I don't know if I was thinking. No, I wasn't thinking about L. Ron Hubbard.
Yeah.
I wasn't saying.
At best, it would introvert you and put you totally inside.
For years, I'm on 2 years. I was sent away for that.
Wow.
Yeah, I have a lot of, I mean, I can get very angry about it. I could get very emotional about it, but I just got to put it behind me. But yeah, and warn people that their means of ethics and justice doesn't exist. So don't go anywhere near it. It's so funny. This interview is not going at all you know, how I thought, like in the way that I thought it would, but I'm glad that we're touching upon these things. I want to tell you of a few other things.
Well, wait a minute. When you say it's not going the way you thought it would, are you dissatisfied?
No, I'm not. No. That's not what I mean. I mean, I was thinking, you know, I would cover different things in a certain exact sequence. We're not doing that. And I think that's totally fine. It's going that, you know, however it's flowing. It's just, it's good.
Well,
I wasn't.
I think this is a story that it had to be told, and I'm glad you're here, Amy. I really am.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, thank you for having me. I didn't realize I would even have so much. Like when you said, forgive yourself, I almost went into tears because, oh, don't get me started. I'm not going to talk about that right now. It's true. It's true. You need to be able to forgive yourself. Yeah, don't get me started on that.
Okay.
So that was the rehabilitation project for us in Florida. So then I got out. I finally left. It was my husband, Matt Pesh, that helped me get out, because in my mindset, I couldn't abandon a group that I swore loyalty to. It just, I couldn't do it. I felt like I just couldn't break through that. And Matt didn't have that idea at all. He was like, screw this place. I mean, it's complete insanity. What's our future here? There's nothing. There's no future here. It's insane. You're never going to get off the rehabilitation project force. Who's going to approve that? You know, because I witnessed what I witnessed, and David Miscavige is being held up as a guru in Scientology. So if I have any sort of disagreement and I don't come to that and say and repent and everything like that to them, then I'll never be able to have my own mind. Anyway, he was wonderful. And he said, let's get out of here. And so we devised a plan. I told him I wanted to leave. They were doing fitness boards at the time. And I thought, oh, perfect. I'll just let them know that I want to leave and they'll let me leave. And instead it worked the opposite. They thought, you know, whatever, I'm not even going to try, but it was hard to get out of there. Finally, Matt and I were put under 24-hour guard, separated, put under 24-hour guard, 2 months of nonstop rice and beans for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. That's the only thing we were fed. And hard manual labor with intensive security checking. And the questions being asked are, have you ever committed an overt, a crime or anything like that? You know, like done anything wrong? Have you ever done anything wrong? So it could just endless. And finally it took Matt looking straight into the camera and saying, because it's being videoed and the confessionals are going to up to the int base. He looked right into the camera and said, that's it. I've had enough. If you don't let me out of here by tomorrow at noon, I am busting through the gates. I am taking Amy and we are leaving. And the only way that you can stop me is to shoot me in the back of the head, because I'm out of here. And they did take it seriously. He was given a bus ticket and sent out. He didn't know what happened with me because we were separated and we weren't allowed to communicate to each other. I was put on an airplane, I think with $150 to my name, put on an airplane and sent back to Seattle. He was put on a bus to his parents in Florida. And all of my phone numbers and notes and personal things were all confiscated before I left. So I didn't have any of the phone numbers because we gave each other contact information in case anything like this would happen, but that was confiscated. So, so I just started like the phone book, Florida, Pesh, anything, you know, I don't know.
Wow.
And so I didn't reach anybody, but his sister, Donna, saw that a 253 phone number had come onto her phone. I didn't speak to her, but because there was no answer, I just hung up. And it says 253, which is a Seattle area code. So she told Matt, and Matt called that number, and my dad picked up the phone. And he said, you know, do you happen to have Amy Scobee there? And Dad says, Amy, Matt's on the phone. After 3 days of me trying to find him. Anyway, he got right on a plane and came up here.
Wow.
Yes. And so within, let's see, we got out on March 1st, and he was up here by March 3rd, and then we got married on March 13th, 2005. 2 weeks later, and we've been married ever since. We're going on, this is our 14th year.
Wow, he's a great guy too. And
Oh
by
my
the way,
goodness.
I definitely want to have him on for an interview. And
Yeah, he's a lot of fun. He's
a great guy.
we're just a team like nobody's business. We have so much fun together. We laugh every day.
I'll tell you, he's a great sense of humor. And if I can use this term, he is a no bullshit type person.
That's exactly right.
I think that describes him exactly. But I want to have him on, and I'd love to have him, as a matter of fact.
Oh yeah,
What a story, and a happy ending too.
It's a very, very happy. I mean, a lot happened since then, and that's what I really want to cover.
Okay.
Like everything up to that point is what's covered in my book. My experience in Scientology, starting young, everything there, what I witnessed, how we escaped, and how we got started up is all in the book. Now, I don't know how much time we have, but I would like to cover.
Go ahead. Go on.
Okay. I would like to cover what happened after I wrote the book. And
I would love to hear it. I would love to hear it. And listen, I'm sure a lot of our listeners want to hear it too, because what you told are things that I wouldn't say they're exactly like, but very similar to what other people have said. Yet the church says that everybody is lying, that none of these things happened. This is their excuse.
Of course they're going to say that.
What do we all get together in a stadium someplace and say, okay, here's what I'm going to say. What are you going to say?
Yeah, thousands of people.
Man.
I know.
This is the true story, and here she is. Yeah, and I say to them, have somebody come and face me on a microphone, and I'll interview you, and show up for that. Well, I haven't got any takers so far. But anyway, go
on. So after we left, we got started, and first thing we did was go to a box we were so excited when we left, like realize I never drove. I didn't have a bank account. I didn't know how to cook. I had never lived in the real world since age 14, so I didn't know anything. And so I didn't go grocery shopping. So we're at my dad's house, and we go grocery shopping, and I realize I can get anything that I want, like root beer floats. So we got root beer floats. And then I hadn't seen any movies, like, even though Forrest Gump had been out for years, we rented Forrest Gump and watched that movie. And it was just, we were like little kids in a candy store. And one of the first things that we did was just look in the newspaper and find a hiring company and go in there. And we took their test, and they're like, why the heck are you guys here? You passed everything 100%. So we just needed a job to get started. So we went to work at a box company. Within 3 days, they wanted us to manage the place. But we were just minimum wage, totally happy at what we're doing, making boxes. And then, we started, there was a discount place that was selling furniture. So, because we got a little apartment within a couple weeks. As soon as we could show a paycheck, we got into a little apartment. And even though we didn't have any credit or anything, when we went there, excuse me, the manager of it, her daughter's name was Matt, and her daughter's name was Amy, and her son's name was Matt. So she was like, "Oh, guys, you guys are in." So we went there, and then we needed furniture, so we went to this little discount place, and it was this old man from New York that ran it, which Matt hit off with, because Matt's from New York. They just hit it off with each other, and so we started buying furniture from him, like with the little money that we had, and then we made our apartment a little furniture place where we laid down plastic sheets, and we varnish and stuff like that. And I would get up in the middle of the night, put another coat on. He would get up in the morning, put another coat on. And then, so we got a whole bunch of furniture ready. And then we were like, we need to have a garage sale. So at this apartment complex, you can't have a garage sale. So we decided to go around, and I saw a man come out, and I said, I was looking at a house, it would be perfect. It's a really busy corner. And a guy says, oh, nobody lives there. Les Schwab is going to buy it up. And I said, oh, where do you live? And he's like, me? Where do I live? I live across the street. Oh, with that really big garage? Yes. I said, would you mind if I had a garage sale at your place? And he's just looking at me like I'm insane. And he says, okay. So we brought over all of our stuff, and it was a Memorial Day weekend. We made $5,000 selling all the things that we had gotten together. And then we started up a little furniture business and buy and resell, and we did really good at that. It got us going, and then at one point, Scientology wise, what was happening was my mom was being forced to disconnect from me. She was getting a lot of pressure. She was being interrogated on the cans about me. What was I doing? I was also looking on the internet and connecting with people who had also left. I went down to LA and visited people there, and I was being contacted by the Office of Special Affairs saying who I could talk to, who I couldn't talk to. I was being sent a partial freeloader bill, which is when you leave, they charge you for any of the services that you did. I was there for 30 years. Matt was there for 30 years or 27. I was there for 27. He was there for 27 or 30. And the partial bill that came in was $250,000. For somebody who left with $150 that doesn't even buy a decent juicer. They were trying to control us about who we could talk to and who we couldn't talk to. We wrote them a letter saying we are done with Scientology. So do not contact us. Do not try to control us. We're going to talk to who we want to talk to. So then it amped up the pressure on my mom, the pressure on her husband, my mom's husband, to get information about what we were doing and also to disconnect from us. To the point where my mom actually disconnected from me. And even though we're the closest mother and daughter, I mean, we're just always have been. She took me up to the mountains. We sat in the stream because she wanted to talk to me. And she got a bottle of wine out, and then she just started to weep. And I swear I could just break down right now talking about it. But she disconnected from me. It was the last time that I spoke to her for a while. And she says, the reason why is because she can't lose her husband, her house, her dogs, her livelihood. She was retired. She didn't have anything other than that. And so therefore, she had to take the lesser of two evils, and it was just ripped her heart out. It was just, she said, but I can tell you one thing, I will never step foot in another Scientology organization for as long as I live. So that was devastating, and that made me want to fight. Especially because right at that time, Tommy Davis went on to CNN with his little mug, and he said, there's no such thing as disconnection in Scientology as you're characterizing it. There's no such thing. We love families. It just made my blood boil. So it's pain. It's pain like you've never felt. And I know that you know that.
Of course I do.
Yes. And so I moved to Clearwater, right on Clearwater Beach, right in the center of where Clearwater is. I did the St. Pete Times article exposing David Miscavige and his abuse. I decided to fight and expose what was going on, because this is a manipulative, controlling, disgusting, human rights abusing organization. And so I did that. I wrote my book. I went to the, let's see, I did the articles with St. Pete Times, and I did an interview with CNN and ABC Nightline, and Scientology sent these quote unquote packets against me to these TV shows, and they sent it to me. And one of the things that they gave them was affidavits from all of the senior executives of that were currently on the property, saying that all the beatings that were happening were Mike and Marty, and that they were almost killing each other. but it wasn't David Miscavige. So I took all of those and I said, in their sworn words against penalty of perjury, they are saying that the atmosphere at the int base is almost killing each other, totally panicked, worried that they were going to kill each other. And what else do you need to know, FBI? They're saying it in their own words that is the atmosphere, even though they're saying David Miscavige didn't have part of it. All of those executives are saying that was the atmosphere up there. And I said, these are the things that I know. There's beatings, there's tortures, there's holding people against their will. And so they came out, the FBI agent came out and interviewed me for a couple of days. And I gave all the information that I had. I don't know what happened to that investigation. I'm just happy that it's in their files if they ever choose to do something about it. And then I came back to Washington State. I moved back over here and I released my book. At that time, I was being fair gamed, nonstop with private investigators. And by the way, Ron, while I was in Florida, they had somebody on us named Dwayne Powell. Who was pretending to go to the furniture auctions with us and befriend us, and he bought a car from us, and he was like being a friend and trying to get a loan with me. And the guy was just a scumbag. We knew that he was a plant.
Well, he was the one. Him and his son were the two PIs that followed me for over.
I heard that later, and I was telling Tony Ortega, that is the same guy. As soon as I saw the picture, I said, that's the same guy that was with us in Florida.
Yeah.
So they covertly do this, but I also, while he was covertly doing that, I also had overtly private investigators tailing us everywhere we went, and sometimes a couple at a time. It was like a little beehive. And even when I came back to Washington, and they were doing that to my family members too, that have never even been in Scientology,
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, when I came back, I reconnected with my mom. I said, you know what? Oh, my aunt called me and said that my mom was so depressed that she was even contemplating suicide. And I said, or that she was worried that she had no reason to live. And I said, you know what? Screw Scientology and all of their rules and anything that they stand for. They are not going to destroy my family like this. So I got a hold of my mom and I said, that's it. Get over here. I said, what we're going to do is we're going to lie. We're going to say that you're not connected with me, but we're going to see each other every single day. Yeah. And we did. And eventually I was able to get her husband out of there too. So they officially resigned from Scientology. Her husband officially resigned, and we were all reunited as a family. Finally. And so that was amazing. We still, on my husband's side, have his brother, Scott, in Scientology, which, hopefully there will be, his mother and his father, they're in their 90s, and getting up there. And what they would like is a family that's reunited, not destroyed because of Scientology. So I'm still praying that happens. So finally, I got my family back together, and that was wonderful. I did a lot of media speaking out against Scientology. There's a quote from Martin Luther King that our lives begin to end the day that we are silent about things that matter. And to me, that kind of really rung true, because this does matter. There's a lot of people's families that are destroyed because of Scientology. There's a lot of people who are separated because of the fact that their kids are in Scientology. And the mindset is that family doesn't matter because you live, a long time or over and over and over again. And so therefore, I don't even understand when I try to think about it now. How does that justify it? How does that rationalize it? Because you're an immortal being, you therefore can disregard your family? How does that even do it?
Okay, and let me interject something here. Tommy Davis was right. They do love families, because without families, they would lose their leverage.
Oh, I guess that's one way to love them. It's an evil way to love them. That's not love, actually. That's not love. It's greed.
Of course it is, but that's how
Yeah.
they get leverage on you, by
Yes.
getting your family to disconnect and making you do what.
It's leverage. Oh yeah. Leverage is exactly what that is, Ron.
Yeah, all the way.
Yeah. Yeah, it is leverage, because that's one of the reasons why a lot of people wouldn't speak out, is because they were afraid that they would
Absolutely.
force the disconnection. Because
Yeah,
you don't want to lose your family. I mean, your family means everything.
I know. So
Um,
this is a heck of a story. And what are you doing now, Amy? Just let me know that, because we're running into a little time constraint.
are we? Okay, good. So what I'm doing now, it's a story in it. So how many minutes do we have, so I can tell how much I'm going to tell you? Do you know?
I'm sorry, I missed what you just said.
Do you know how many minutes that we have left?
Well, like 5 minutes, 10 minutes.
Okay. So I just want to. So my life is kind of totally took a different turn for the better. Like all of a sudden, we did really good. We bought a house. We were in electronic sales for several years as independent sales contractors, and we did really good. We were able to buy a house, and we have 3 cars. We have a nice place. And now, when I went to Los Angeles, my mom passed away. Okay, and that was the hardest thing that ever happened. She had cancer, and she passed away. And right before she passed away, I was reading Leah's book, Troublemaker, to her. And I took a picture of me reading Leah's book, and I sent it to Leah. Leah, on her own dime, sent out a shoot crew team to shoot my mom, to get her statement about disconnection. That appeared in the A&E series, Scientology in the Aftermath, episode 1, season 1.
I saw that. I saw that.
Yes.
It was wonderful.
And that was my mom. She passed away 2 weeks after doing that interview. So thank God to Leah for sending out the team.
Leah is the best, I got to tell you. She's like the Joan of Arc of our time.
Yes. So she sent out that team, and my mom was able to tell her story. So we were able to get the word out to a lot of people. My mom passed away. I wanted to get kind of out of this area because my mom lives right down the street from my house here. So I went down to LA, had an opportunity to work on a few, the marketing of a few movies, Christian-based movies, which was Ben-Hur and The Shack, with Motive Entertainment and our friend Gabrielle. And while I was there, the movie The Shack really changed something in me. It made an amazing shift in me with regards to forgiveness, love, trust, faith. And when I came back, I was done with that project, and I came back to be with my family here. I just sent up a prayer saying, open up the doors to whatever my purpose is meant to be. I know I'm almost 55 and it's late in my life, but what is it that I need to be doing? Because I need some help with that direction. And all of a sudden, the doors just started opening. So I had done a celebration of life service for my mom, and I did everything for that. I put together a beautiful tribute video, all the music of her favorite music. I put together her poems that she had written as postcards for the guests. I wrote about her journey and attributes and qualities that made her so unique. And I did that service to a lot of people, and so many people were saying, "Oh my goodness, you should do this for a living." So I created a company called Graceful Farewell. And the second I started promoting that, everything just kind of fell right into place, and I was hired by the largest company that does funeral homes and cemeteries in Canada and the United States. And I was hired as what's called a celebrant, and that is a life tribute specialist. I did the training for it. I was officially certified, and I've done over 100 graveside funeral services, memorial services for people. Wow. And I'm a trained celebrant, and I do the whole Seattle market. So I'm busy. I'm all over the place. And what I do is I meet with people. I find out all about their loved one. I write about their journey. everything about them, put it together in a wonderful service for them, and then I conduct the service. And it's different for everyone. Sometimes it's beautiful candle lightings, scripture. Sometimes it's playing Bad to the Bone while people are drive the Harleys up the center of the aisle. You know, it's just all tailored to that person and all their likes and everything. To number one, acknowledge their wonderful life, and number two, create healing for the people left behind. And it's a very rewarding profession, and that's what I'm doing right now. And I really thoroughly enjoy it. I feel like it's a divine assignment, honestly, and I really love it.
Amy, this has been a tremendous story. I got to tell you,
I could talk for 100 years, that's for sure. I mean, I've got lots of interesting stories and everything, but so does everybody. You know, that's the thing that I've learned in doing this is every single person is here for a reason. Every single person is wonderful in their own way. I think that Scientology is a counterfeit religion. It's destructive to individuals and families, and that needs to be exposed. And I think that David Miscavige, I mean, he's obviously watching this video. He chose the evil side. He chose to be evil and destructive. And all I can say, you know, is, you know, turning people into shells of themselves and beating people and treating them as if they were animals and stuff is the wrong path. And, you know, his heart is going to be judged. The color of his heart is going to be judged at one point. And so he can either make a change or not and suffer the consequences. That's how I feel about it.
And I'm going to tell you, Amy, I don't think I'm going to add another word to that. This has been an adventure, and I really appreciate you coming on.
Yeah, well, thank you for giving me this platform. And I, you know, it's always fun to talk to people who have also experienced the same thing and understand what we've gone through. Your program is called Life After Scientology. There is life after Scientology, and there's so many people that have prayed for me. When I was working on the movies like The Shack, there were pastors and everything like that suddenly saw me and said, "Oh my goodness, we saw the show. Our whole congregation prayed for you." Wow. I mean, I felt so touched. That's actual love and care.
Yeah.
You know, so I just feel blessed to be doing what I'm doing right now. I feel healed from the effects of Scientology, even though you struck a chord on the forgiveness part of it. I'll have to take a look at that. But I just want people to know there is life after Scientology, and that it's a good life. It's a good life, and just connect with your family, you know, and stay true to your own values.
Amy Scobee, thank you very much.
You are so welcome. Mwah.
Okay, so I am Ron Miscavige. This is Life After Scientology. I'll see you on the next episode.